This week, it's a Watchman exclusive. We are at a live fire drill with the Israel Defense Forces. This is the Golan Heights. We are just a stone's throw away from Syria. It's cold, it's muddy. These conditions are treacherous, but the brave soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces are out in the field. They're training in their tanks, preparing for the threats at their doorstep, whether it's Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iran's proxy in Syria. The IDF is serving as the first line of defense, not only for Israel, but for the West. You'll get the inside, behind-the-scenes story this week at a live fire drill with the Israel Defense Forces, only right here on The Watchman. Hey everyone, Erick Stakelbeck here. We are on the Golan Heights near the Syria border at a live fire drill with the Israel Defense Forces, a nighttime drill. It's cold out here on the Golan, but the brave soldiers of the IDF are here. They're training in particular for the Hezbollah threat out of Lebanon. We're here with Noah right now. Rugged terrain, as you can see. Noah, you're taking us right now to a D9.
Yeah, D9.
Tell everyone what that is and why it's so important for the IDF.
The D9 is one of our machines that opens up the path for the soldiers to go in. It's a big machine, huge tractor, huge strength, and they're the first one to go in combat.
So they kind of make a way. They kind of clear the way for the IDF. Yeah, they open things up. You can see why, folks. Look how big this thing is, the D9. So this drill will be an hour long, I guess, or so?
More. They're here for days.
Here for days.
Yeah.
And folks, again, as Noah said, they're here for days. These are harsh elements. It's cold up here on the Golan. You're in the mountains here, and we are very close to the Syria border. But the IDF is out here because there are very serious threats gathering on Israel's borders to the north in particular. I'm talking specifically about Hezbollah and about Lebanon. And that's really the main thrust of this drill, right, Noah?
Yeah.
To prepare for that threat.
Yes.
And these guys are getting ready. They're going to drill, and they're drilling in particular to combat that Hezbollah threat out of southern Lebanon. They're ready. The soldiers of the IDF are ready, and we're getting an inside look here. Inside the tank, you'll have four IDF soldiers in there. They're like brothers, and they're together, and they're united, and they're ready. They're ready for all threats, and the threats, as we know, are gathering here. We're about, 30 minutes from Syria, not far from Lebanon. The Iranian regime's proxies in full force, and the IDF is preparing for that threat, defending not only Israel, but defending the West and the United States. The Israel Defense Forces are the first line of defense for America as well. Lieutenant Colonel, thanks so much for joining us here on the Watchman Show.
You're more than welcome.
Yeah, hey, we're at this live fire drill for the Israel Defense Forces. Tell us exactly what's going on here and what you're preparing for.
We have two companies here, a logistics company right over there, in those, if you can see the small lights over there. And we have tanks. Tanks are completely in the dark, and also infantry and combat engineering in a combined drill. Meant to simulate as close as possible the challenges that they're going to meet in war. I really believe that one of the greatest duties that a commander has towards his subordinates are to get them ready for war, to allow them to be in situations that will make them ready, that will allow them to imagine the challenges of war. There is nothing like a actual combat experience, but I really think that in this cold, muddy night, we have the conditions to do our best, our absolutely best. We're taking it super seriously, and guys are over there in a long drill. They're gonna stay in these conditions on their gears all week long, and they're working hard and they're getting ready.
In particular, look, there's a serious threat in southern Lebanon. We have Hezbollah there. That has to be I would think, one of the major threats that you're training for with this drill.
That's absolutely right. I mean, when you're trying to simulate real combat conditions, I think that one of the biggest challenges that you have is to allow your people to experience through as close as possible conditions the challenges that they're going to meet over there north to the border.
Sure. Hezbollah seems to present kind of a unique challenge. They've been in Syria getting battlefield experience there. What are their capabilities like? We know about the rocket and missile arsenal. Do they have the kind of capability where they can take on Israeli tanks?
I think we're really getting ready and we're really taking them seriously.
Yeah.
But we have to remember that the enemy that they met, their enemies in Syria, are completely different from the IDF, from the capabilities that we can show on the battlefield. B, we have the best people, the best men, young men and women in the world. And C, we have the best equipment. So I think they will try their best as well. But it's not a match. I think that they really know that, and I think that they're intimidated.
Just so people at home know, these are young, I don't want to call them kids, they're young men and women that are in these tanks. Talk about the conditions inside the tanks. Look, it's kind of tight quarters in there. Four people in there. Talk a little bit more about the conditions that they're serving under here in the tanks.
Well, you can actually hear them roaring in the background as we speak. But I think that tank warfare is extremely challenging. It's demanding. It's making a group of 4 young people to be the best friends, completely depend on one another's actions. It's a bit tight, but in those cold conditions, it's a big bonus.
Whether it's Hamas and Islamic Jihad in the south, Hezbollah to the north, Shia militias to the north.
And we're just here.
You're here. You're on war. You have to be on war footing constantly.
That's right.
But you're ready to
roll.
That's right,
and we're really doing our best.
Well, good luck with the live fire drill, and thanks so much for joining us, Lieutenant Colonel. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks again to the Israel Defense Forces for giving our Watchman team exclusive access to that live fire tank drill. Well, up next, we're staying on the Golan Heights to discover what comes next now that the world's most dangerous terrorist is dead and gone. Folks, you need to hear this. Stick around.
Christian support for Israel starts with the Bible. Koufos' ebook, Why Christians Should Support Israel, will lay out 7 biblical reasons why it's important to love and bless Israel. Starting with the Bible, learn why Christians are indebted to Israel and the Jewish people for our Christian faith. Discover why Israel has a biblical and historic claim to the land, and see why modern Israel matters to God, to Christians, and to the world. This free ebook is an invaluable resource for you, unpacking the biblical foundation of Christian Zionism and how you as a Christian can defend and bless Israel. Visit www.kufi.org/ebook to receive your free ebook today, and join Koufos to add your voice to a movement of over 8 million Christians speaking out for Zion's sake.
And welcome back. Let's head back to the Golan Heights, to a place known as the Valley of Tears. Now, it was the scene of a major tank battle between Israel and Syria during the 1973 Yom Kippur War. And as our good friend Elliot Chodoff tells us, it's still a buffer today as Iran tries to expand to Israel's doorstep, a goal that just became much more difficult, thankfully, following the death of arch-terrorist Qasem Soleimani. Take a look. Qasem Soleimani is dead and gone, the architect of Iran's terror strategy across the region.
Yes.
Where are we at now?
I would expand on that. Soleimani was the architect of Iran's reach into the region. Terror for sure, militias, Hezbollah. Terror isn't big enough for what Soleimani was. He was an active operator, leading, as I said, the militias and everything that was going on. But I think part of what made him really important that's missed in America is the fact that he was in that position for over 20 years. And it's something that we don't relate to in Western democracies, because every 4 years or so, 5 years, and I'm talking about officials, not elected officials, move on, they retire, they move on to another position, and that's in part to make sure that those individuals don't gather that much power around themselves as individuals.
Yet he became, over those 20 years, Elliot, the second most powerful man in Iran.
Exactly, the man. And who answered directly to the supreme leader. In other words, he was out of the regular line of command and answered directly to the top. So a very, very important person, not just an important position.
And he projected that power, as you said, across the region.
He did. He had the personality.
Yeah.
Part of what made him what he was his personal charisma. Hassan Nasrallah said that he was a close personal friend. Others, close personal friends. And you know what? You do things for your friends sometimes more than just taking orders from them. And that was also part of his power. Very, very difficult for them to replace. I would say impossible to replace in the short term. Over the long term, we'll see. Maybe somebody else will lead up to that, but that's 20 years down the road.
Yeah. In charge of Iran's external terror operations, the blood, from an American perspective, we knew he had plots, obviously, to destroy the state of Israel. That was his end game. He was working towards it actively.
For sure.
From an American perspective, the blood of hundreds, at least, of American soldiers on his hands.
General Petraeus said over 1,000, and I'll go with that number.
Yeah.
In terms of directly supporting the enemies that America has fighting American troops in Iraq and Afghanistan and in other places. So yes, he was an active participant. Generals don't do the shooting, but an active participant in attacks on Americans.
But many in the West seem to be kind of gnashing their teeth and wringing their hands about Soleimani's death. Can you explain that? Because to me, it's maddening. The world's #1 terrorist is dead and gone. I think that's a good thing.
I know it's a good thing. Look, I think part of the explanation is domestic politics, and I don't think we have to go into that in any depth, but it's there. And that brings us to the second point. I think that Westerners in general, and in this case, Americans in particular, don't really appreciate how dangerous he was. It's a distant kind of a thing. And I'll add on to that, and this had to do also, I think, with some media hype. The belief that by taking him out, it actually made the situation more dangerous than it was. And I understand that logic, even though it's incorrect. The danger has always been here. Iran created that danger all the way back to the hostages in the embassy.
That's right.
And the attack on the Marines in Beirut, it's a very long list.
Sure.
That danger existed and continues to exist. The Soleimani takeout maybe brought it more imminent. But anytime you change a policy of appeasement, it brings the danger up in terms of time. But it doesn't elevate the intensity of the danger. The immediate response to taking out Soleimani was that missile attack on the American base. Now, no Americans were killed, and there were mixed reports on why and what, but there were no real injuries. They launched one strike. It really had no effect. And they said, okay, we're good on this. And to me, that teaches me two things. One is that the Iranians are trying to get back into the situation of America tolerating their attacks. And just recently, there were the attacks on the American embassy.
Rocket attacks in Baghdad.
And same thing, no response. Now, maybe there will be one, but no immediate response. And responses have to be immediate to have deterrent effect. So there's a slow return that the Iranians are manipulating to the situation of they can get away with it if they use proxies.
They're testing the waters, they're probing and trying to get back.
It's actually pushing the envelope a little bit more each time. It's not a massive response, because that would bring a massive counter response. But all right, let's push it a little further. Let's push it a little beyond that, and let's see how far we can go with it. I'm also not convinced that we have seen the final response by Iran to the Soleimani attack. And I think this might be setting it up. I think we're going to be looking at something indirect, in other words, not directly Iranian. Hezbollah somewhere, Europe, United States, one of the other militias somewhere. I don't want to give them any ideas. We don't have to speak in terms of specifics.
God forbid, Jewish targets, American targets abroad.
There's no shortage, no shortage. But I think before they do that, first of all, an operation like that takes time to set up. Before they do that, they are already operating to reestablish that status quo of if somebody else does it, we don't get hit back for it.
Coming up, we head to Jerusalem to get the inside story of how the Iranian regime is increasingly on the ropes. The death of Qasem Soleimani may only be the beginning. Don't move.
Join Christians United for Israel on Capitol Hill June 28th through 30th to do your part in ensuring the relationship between the United States and Israel remains stronger than ever. Right now, Israel faces many enemies that seek her destruction. As anti-Semitism continues to surge at an alarming rate around the world, Christians have a moral imperative to stand with Israel. In just over a decade, Koufos has played a leading role in efforts to curb Iran's nuclear ambitions, hinder Hezbollah and Hamas's war of terror against Israel, and fight against the anti-Semitic BDS movement. As Watchman on behalf of Israel and the Jewish people, Koufos needs your help to ensure that Israel and her people continue to be strong and safe. Join us in Washington on June 28th through 30th to remind your elected officials that America's Christians stand with Israel. With over 8 million members, Christians United for Israel is the largest pro-Israel voice in America. Add yours today by registering for the 2020 Washington Summit.
Welcome back. Meir Jafetinfar was born in Iran, but now lives in Israel. He's a top expert on the Iran threat, and he joined us in Jerusalem to discuss the growing pressure on the Iranian regime from without and from within. Folks, this could be a very important development, not only for the Iranian people, but for Israel and America. Take a look.
One thing I would have to say for your government, for the people of the United States, is that you have to watch out what they will try to do before the re-election of President Trump. They don't want President Trump to be elected. So the Iranian regime doesn't want.
And that's because he has been strong.
They resent him first and foremost for walking out of the Iranian nuclear deal, and then it was the maximum pressure. So I think they could, for example, we are very likely to see a big push to get U.S. forces out of Iraq in order to make President Trump look like a failure.
Which would mean terror attacks by Iranian-backed militias against...
Well, actually, to be honest with you, it'd probably be political first and foremost. Because the killing of Qasem Soleimani, you guys changed the rules of the game.
Wow, man. But, key point, Meir, as you said, the strategy remains the same, right? That Soleimani was sort of the architect of it. Yemen, Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, surrounding Israel and squeezing Israel remains the same, right?
Look at what they're doing to the Syrian people. The regime that Qasem Soleimani kept alive from 2011 to 2015, and then he brought Putin, that regime has killed, gassed, murdered, tortured to death, something like 500,000 people, and they had nothing to do with Israel. Look, the Iranian regime sees its interest in the region not just to pressure Israel, but to expand its influence and to expand its economic interest. It has economic interest in Syria, for example. But we in Israel, we are, we can take care of ourselves. And I say that with lots of modesty. It's not easy. We're not shy to get in the ring, but we hope to live in peace with everybody. I'm an Iranian Israeli. I'm very proud of my Iranian heritage. I know that majority of the people of Iran don't want war with the state of Israel. They may disagree with some of our policies, but that's okay. Some of our friends disagree with our policies.
Right.
But what I can tell you is that overwhelming majority of people of Iran are against the Iranian regime policy of antagonizing regional countries. They want the regime and the government to look inwards because Iran faces some very, very big challenges.
Yeah, and one of those challenges, Meir, is the protests in the streets. We see pretty major protests right now in Iran against the regime, between sanctions having an effect, people in the streets. The regime seems to have its back against the wall a little bit right now. How effective can these protests be? And could we eventually see regime change from within inside Iran?
Those demonstrations, they are the symptom, they're not the cause. The cause, it's a drought. Iran faces one of the worst droughts in its contemporary history. Parts of southern Tehran are literally sinking. Literally, the ground is sinking. In Tehran, there are sinkholes appearing every month. There's a major problem of pollution in Tehran, because they're using mazout, which is something you use like not very refined oil to produce energy.
Okay.
The people are very angry. They're looking at a regime which is not managing the country, a regime because of its mismanagement and its corruption is basically killing people, and it's a regime that lies to the people of Iran. We saw in the recent Ukrainian air crash. There was recently Sunni imams from Saudi Arabia going to Auschwitz.
Yeah.
I hope soon to see Iranian Shia imams going there. Unfortunately for now, Ayatollah Khamenei is one of the world's foremost Holocaust deniers.
Up next, my final thoughts on Israel's ultimate weapon in its conflict with Iran. Find out what it is after the break. Don't move.
Over the past 2 years, 30 nations have been represented at the annual Christians United for Israel Summit in Washington, D.C. Israel supporters from across the globe joined Koufos in standing in solidarity with the state of Israel and the Jewish people. They celebrated and rejoiced at the night to honor Israel. And some have requested that their countries follow America's lead and move their embassies to Jerusalem, the eternal, undivided capital of Israel. Now, with over 7 million active members, Koufos is the largest, most ethnically diverse pro-Israel organization in the U.S. As we, along with Koufos UK and Koufos Canada, expand our reach into other regions, including Brazil, we are excited about the future of this movement for such a time as this. For Zion's sake, we will not be silent. From all over the world, from every nation, we are Koufos.
And welcome back. As I hear about the plans by Iran and its proxies to encircle and destroy Israel, I have to just shake my head. Iran's mullahs clearly have not read Psalm 121, which says that he who watches over Israel, God Almighty, neither slumbers nor sleeps. And what about Psalm 37, which says that the Lord laughs at the wicked and their evil plans? Folks, there's a long track record of nations and empires coming against Israel and the Jewish people, and all of them met the same disastrous fate. Look no further than the Babylonians, the Philistines, Pharaoh, Haman, and the Nazis to figure out how this is going to end for Israel's enemies today. Israel will not only survive, it will thrive. But the people of Israel need our help. As Christians, we are called to stand in the gap for God's people and God's land. And that's exactly what we're doing at Christians United for Israel. We are over 8 million followers of Jesus, standing boldly with one unified voice for such a time as this. You see the information there on your screen, so join our movement, and while you're at it, be sure to register for the 2020 Koufos Summit in Washington, D.C. It's the premier pro-Israel event in the United States. I will see you there, and I'd also love to hear from you on social media. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you'll get exclusive content that you can't see anywhere else. Well, thanks for joining us this week on The Watchman. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.